Hello, welcome. My name is Stephanie Eberly. I'm the Manager of Educational Resources and Client Services at Stanford University School of Medicine Career Center. Today we are presenting Industry Insights, Novartis Institutes for Biomedical Research, Postdoctoral Program. The Industry Insights program is a monthly series which provides opportunities for leaders in a variety of sectors to discuss first-hand perspectives and insights into their technologies and professional offerings. And we are joined today by Ross Tracy, who is Associate Director in the Education Office for the NIBR. And he comes to us from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're also joined by B Jefferson, who's an investigator with the program, and Debbie Chang, who is a postdoc in the program currently, and both are alumni, so welcome back. Okay. I want to let you know that there is a reception outside following, so please join us afterward for that, and letting our speakers please make it out there first so they may also get enjoy. Okay? But otherwise, thank you very much, and enjoy the program.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ross Tracy. I'm with the Education Office at your first acronym for the day, which is NIBR, the Novartis Institutes for Biomedical Research. I'll try to avoid using other acronyms today, but because we have a lot of them. But if I do, feel free to say, "Hey, Ross, what was that?" I'm not quite sure I understood what that meant. I'm here with my colleagues to tell you a little bit about NIBR and the postdoc program, to tell you a little bit about myself. I have a background in cardiovascular pharmacology. I've been working in the industry for about 17 years now. Worked previously at Abbott Labs and Pfizer, where I was biology lab head and research project leader in cardiovascular and diabetes programs. I've been with NIBR now for about a year in the education office. I figured it's about time to give back some of the things I've learned in the past 17 years and help provide in-house educational training on science-based topics to our scientists, and also help manage the postdoc program, which we'll talk about today. Okay. So what I'd like to do for the next hour is to cover three different things. First of all, to give you an idea or a sense of what Novartis and NIBR are all about. I think it's very important for any of you who are thinking about where to do a postdoc is that you understand where it is you're going and what their culture and philosophy are like. Not only do you want to be doing the type of research that you're passionate about and you're interested in, but it would help if your philosophies and so forth align with the company or academic setting you're going to. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Then I'm going to turn the podium over to AB, who's going to give you a little bit more specific insight into our campus here in Emeryville and the type of research and opportunities that are present there. And then I'll wrap up with giving you some more specifics about how the postdoc program actually works at NIBR. So the details of the program and how you'd apply and how to get into it. Okay? I'd like to keep this as informal as possible. So if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to interrupt me. If you'd like to wait till the end, that's fine too. All right, so any questions before we get started? All right, so let's start with a little background on Novartis and NIBR to begin with. So Novartis is a global pharmaceutical company. We work in four primary areas. One is innovative healthcare products, new medicines for unmet medical needs. We have low-cost generics through our Sandoz unit, which you may have heard about. Preventative vaccines, and also consumer health products. We are the third largest company via sales, and one of the most respected. If anybody here in the crowd looks at Fortune magazine, in the top 100, we've been in the top 10 for the past 7 years or so, and the top 3 for the past 3 years. So widely regarded in the business community as well. We also invest a lot of money in R&D. We put back about 17% of our revenues back in R&D. That's a very large percentage for any industry. And that works out to about $7.5 billion a year, which is a large amount of money no matter how you cut it. It works out to about $150 million a week that we spend in R&D. So you can see it's a very costly process that we're involved with. So our mission is twofold. Firstly, as you might expect, is towards the patients. We want to discover innovative new medicines that both increase quality of life and prolong life, so our focus is on the patients. As you will not be surprised to hear, however, we're also a business, so we have to provide shareholder return to those that invest their funds in us to give them an adequate source of return on those investments as well. But our primary focus is, of course, on the patients. That's why we do what we do. To give you a sense of some of the philanthropy the company does, we donated in various forms to about 80 million people last year in various different ways through donations for different diseases, patient assistance for those who can't afford their medications. A unique aspect of Novartis and NIBR that I've not seen in other pharmaceutical companies is that we have several different research organizations within NIBR that are focused on unmet needs in the developing world. And these institutes, two of them here, NITD and NVGH, definitions are down here at the bottom. The work that these institutes do is actually done at cost. So anything that these institutions come up with to focus on these diseases, or NVGH works primarily on enteric diseases, any discoveries that come out of that are provided at cost to those who need it. So it's basically a nonprofit research arm of NIBR. So we have 15 sites worldwide, about 7,000 employees globally. About 1.8 billion of that 7.4 billion total is spent within NIBR. And we have specific centers that focus not only on different diseases, but also different types of platforms that can help those different disease areas actually achieve what they're trying to do and trying to target specific disease areas we're interested in. Globally, this is where we're situated. So we have several different sites within the U.S. You'll hear more about Emeryville in a few minutes from AB. I'm based in Cambridge. We have another site in East Hanover. Our world headquarters are in Basel, Switzerland, for Novartis, for the Novartis company. We also have a research presence there. And we have other sites scattered across the globe as well. We have another new research site in Shanghai as well. And we do both basic research at these sites, and also some of them actually work on translational sciences, so trying to actually translate the discoveries our preclinical scientists have made into patients. So actually show that those discoveries will actually work in a patient, which is a big challenge for any pharmaceutical company. From a disease area perspective, we got pretty much all of them covered, as you might imagine, from a company our size. And not only do we cover these different diseases, but I mentioned platform lines before. We also have these different lines that are focused on providing new technologies or understandings of mechanisms which help those disease areas actually be successful. So we work in biologics. Classically, large pharma companies like Novartis and NIBR work on small molecules. So these are the pills that we're all familiar with that we take, and they're orally bioavailable. But a lot of large companies are getting more into biologics, so things like antibodies, siRNA, these sort of things, which are not necessarily orally bioavailable, but allow us to target, go after new targets that we couldn't before, such as protein-protein interactions, which are not amenable to a small molecule approach. Global discovery chemistry, which of course is critical for any small molecule type of based effort. One unique thing about NIBR and our culture is that we spend a fair amount of time focusing on increasing knowledge of mechanism around various diseases. A lot of companies do not spend very much time working on trying to improve their knowledge of mechanism of diseases they want to work in. If they don't understand the mechanism, they'll wait for academic centers such as Stanford or others to actually move the field there and wait for the discoveries or developments to come out of those avenues before they'll start investing resources on it. We actually have groups that try and do that type of basic research within our organization as well. Others such as metabolism and pharmacokinetics, kind of self-explanatory, how the drug is absorbed and metabolized, excreted. CPC actually runs all our high-throughput screens for us, so oftentimes when we're trying to identify a drug against a new target, it's really a shotgun approach. So we're taking millions of compounds and throwing them against that target, hoping one of them sticks and will actually lead to a drug. So those all require assays to be developed and validated, which is what CPC does. And then these groups, along with DMPK, form our translational sciences group. which is, as I said earlier, is involved with actually taking those discoveries from our preclinical scientists and actually showing they work in a patient, which is the really big challenge for us. It's hard enough to discover a drug, but then to go a step further and show it works in a patient is a big one. To give you a sense of what's going on at the different sites, we don't pursue every therapeutic area at every site, nor do we have every platform line at every site. So when you're thinking about postdoc opportunities with NIBR, there are opportunities for you at all these different sites. If you want to relocate, if you don't want to stay here in the Bay Area, you want to go to China or Europe, those are opportunities too, if that sort of thing is what you'd like. But these list some of the different therapeutic areas that are being pursued at the different sites, and then the platform lines that are at those sites as well. So it varies. We don't do every disease area at every site, nor necessarily have every platform at every site as well. All right.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
You said 110 postdocs at those sites. Is that total or at each site?
Now, that's total, and actually this is a little out of date. We're a little higher than that right now. We've got a budgeted headcount of about 120. I think we're at 116 now. But yeah, that's spread across the sites. So we have most of the concentration is in Cambridge and Basel. So we have about 40 at each site. We have 6 here in Emeryville, and a couple open positions there as well. We mix and match where the openings are based on what the postdoc's interested in doing and where the need is in the disease area. So we don't have a quota in any particular site.
Okay.
Yep.
I noticed or it looks like the Singapore site is not part of this program, or is that?
It is. So yeah, it's a little complicated in that. So we have 4 sites: the one in Singapore, one in Siena, one here in San Diego, and also one in Basel, which used to be a separate part of Novartis. Now they became part of NIBR earlier this year, and so they're all part of that organization now. And some of them have postdocs, some don't. So Basel, for instance, the site there has a lot of postdocs. They've always been very academically oriented there. NITD in Singapore and MVGH in Siena don't have any. They haven't had a postdoc program. They haven't been part of our program, but they are now, and so opportunities could open up there. As much as we'd like to think we can do all this stuff on our own, we're not quite that naive. We realize that this is a real effort a partnership between industry and academia and other companies as well. So we have a lot of talented scientists. They're working on a lot of very interesting targets. They can't do it all. And so another way we improve our success rate and help share in the scientific community is through collaborations with different academic institutes, such as you see listed here, and of course working with other companies as well. So they may have targets we're interested in, they may have new technologies that we don't have access to that we want to capitalize on. So we'll set up those collaborations based on our needs at the time and what will benefit both sides of that interaction. So a couple things about our philosophy, which I said earlier is really important. This kind of captures one of the key challenges that the pharmaceutical industry as a whole faces, not just Novartis or NIBR, and that is we fail greater than 95% of the time. It's a reality of what we do. We're not building cars. And even though we all think we know a lot about biology and how we all function, and you guys are here helping advance those frontiers every day, there's still a lot we don't understand. And so we can screen a lot of compounds, and we'll be very lucky to get one approved drug out of the end of that process, 14 years later perhaps, and maybe $2 billion of investment. So we fail a lot of the time. But that's where postdocs come in and where they can really benefit, and they can learn a lot, and we can learn from them as well, and that you can help us figure out ways to try and reduce this attrition through better understanding of knowledge of mechanisms. All right, because the more we understand about the science, the more rationally and intelligently we can actually design those new molecules and new approaches to be successful in a patient. So the strategy at NIBR is, again, rather unique from what I've seen from my experience in industry. And we look at 2 things. One is unmet medical need, and one is knowledge of mechanism. And we fit everything into this kind of grid. Now, what does unmet medical need mean to you? Someone want to tell me what an unmet medical need is from your perspective?
There's no treatment for certain disease.
Okay, no treatment for certain disease. Okay. Other thoughts? Poor treatment options, right? Okay, so there may be a lot of options out there, but they may not serve your particular, treat your particular type of disease or work very effectively for you, right? Other ideas? Yep.
Options are too expensive.
Okay. They may be too expensive, right? You can't afford them, all right? All right. Others?
Could have side effects.
Side effects, right. So you might have a therapy that works for you, but you can't tolerate the side effects, right? And that is not a minor problem, because if the patient does not take the meds, they're not going to get better. So patient compliance is a big issue. So these are all unmet medical needs. And I can tell you from NIBR's perspective, an unmet medical need can be one patient not having their disease well controlled. All right? We are not focused on numbers in NIBR. We're focused on, is there an unmet medical need? And if that unmet medical need exists and we also understand the mechanism involved, then we'll work on it. All right? But those are the two main criteria we think about. The other interesting aspect of what NIBR does, and again, where postdocs really can fulfill an important role and really develop their own careers by joining us for that period of time, is that we do a significant amount, as I said earlier, of basic type of research. So there could be an unmet medical need, very high unmet medical need, but we simply don't understand the mechanisms of that disease well enough to really be able to rationally come up with an approach that we think will successfully target it. So we have groups within NIBR that are actually focused on trying to move that needle on the knowledge of mechanisms. So that developmental and molecular pathways I pointed out earlier is one of those groups that does primarily that. All right? So we want to be working in this area, high unmet medical need, high knowledge of mechanism, but if we're over here, we will try and push ourselves over into that area where we have a high understanding of both. We don't want to work down here. I think it's kind of obvious. There's a low unmet medical need. We don't understand what's going on with the disease, so it makes no sense to be working there. And over here, maybe a low unmet medical need, high knowledge of mechanism. Well, that's a science-based business decision as to whether we work in that area. But this is the key aspect of NIBR culture, which I think you'll find is different from a lot of other pharmaceutical companies. So pathways. You guys find that amusing. I'm sure I hear a little snickering in the audience. Okay. This, as you know, yes?
Just kind of curious, so I guess the bottom right corner,
Yeah.
that really ties into about what Sandoz does. And I'm just kind of curious how that ties into NIBR.
Yeah, well, so, yeah, that's a good point. And Sandoz, as you wouldn't be surprised, would market generic versions of any of our drugs and generics versions of others. So there'd be a dialogue going on between Sandoz scientists and NIBR around our different projects because we need to provide all the information that we have come up with scientifically and process-wise and so forth to Sandoz to allow them to actually market that drug as a generic. So there are clear interactions, discussions going on between the Sandoz arm and NIBR, for example, as there are with other parts of the organization. Does that answer your question? Or? Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Others, yeah.
Is the strategy kind of pushing towards a lot of first-in-class sort of drugs and that sort of thing?
Well, yeah, we'd always like to be first in class. That's not necessarily the best place to be all the time.
Yeah,
all right. I mean, my own history, Lipitor from Pfizer. I mean, that was the third statin on the market. It's the blockbuster, not the first two. Okay, because you can learn a lot from what your predecessors do. What we're really trying to do at NIBR is get away from the blockbuster model. That's the killer. Does anybody know what a blockbuster is? What is it?
It's one drug that is responsible for a large percentage of the sales of the company.
Okay, right. And what's that percentage? Can you put a number on it?
It could be 20%.
I'm thinking dollars per year.
I mean,
There's
$10 billion a year.
That's a real big blockbuster. Yeah, exactly. Blockbusters to the border, the numbers now is $1 billion basically. A drug that brings in $1 billion a year is considered a blockbuster. And you're right, I mean, it can be a large percentage of a company's revenue stream, and it can be a killer when you lose the patent on that drug. Again, look at Pfizer, because Lipitor is going off patent next year, and they're going to lose a full 25% of their revenue stream. So we want to get away from that. And so we're really focusing on, again, if you focus on the unmet medical need and knowledge of mechanism, it doesn't have to be a large patient population, but if you can really drill down into that and show the drug is effective, all right, and bring it to the market for that, well, then it will naturally expand into other patient populations as well, because I don't need to tell you in this audience that biology is highly conserved. And if you can find an effective way of targeting one pathway, you can probably find other pathways that will work in as well, which is, hence this slide of the London Underground. I mean, this is simplistic compared to what you guys deal with every day, right? All right. And so what NIBR is trying to do is to take information from the human genome, for example. You get all these proteins floating around in the cell. They're communicating in different ways. How do they actually communicate? Who's talking to who? Can you identify this critical node that you could actually put a drug against that could effectively target a disease and then could expand into other indications? And so an example of that, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the mTOR pathway. This whole pathway is initially thought with rapamycin to be something that was effective primarily for organ transplant, to prevent organ rejection during organ transplant. Well, from what we know now from greater understanding from pathways is that there are numerous other disease areas that inhibitors of this pathway could be beneficial in. And some of them are just shown here. And I can tell you an example from my own background in cardiovascular medicine is that when you have a stent put in to open up a blood vessel in your heart, that blood vessel wants to actually respond in a negative way to having that foreign material in there and actually hypertrophies and close down again. Well, compounds like rapamycin or our drug everolimus, which are very similar, actually prevent that hypertrophy of smooth muscle and actually allow the blood vessel to stay open. And we wouldn't have known that until we actually understood the pathway and knew what other diseases that pathway was involved in. So this is really critical to the philosophy around NIBR. And again, why postdocs, I think, can really get a really good experience within NIBR, and we can both learn from each other because we really try and make this as an academically focused a program as possible around understanding pathways and mechanisms to help us be more effective. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to AB to tell you a little bit more about the Emeryville site, what's going on there. Any quick questions now, or as you heard, we'll be around at the end for the reception and we can answer more questions at the end as well. Yeah.
Is there any restrictions for publication?
As best as we can make it, no. But I'll cover that when I go into the program itself. Okay? If I don't cover enough detail for you, let me know. All right?
I have a question.
Yep.
So what exactly is the structure of the R&D department there? Because you say there is a need to have more postdoc fellow there because you want to learn more of the expertise from the basic science part. But in a lot of companies, in my understanding, most of the scientists, one or senior scientists also have PhD background, and possibly have postdoctoral experience.
Right.
So what's the significant need that you want to bring new postdocs versus?
Yeah, well, the postdoc program is a win-win situation for both parties. Okay, we're focused on doing the best we can to provide a experience for the postdoc that will open up all opportunities to them when they want to leave and really advance their career development in as academically based a program as we can make it. Now, but the flip side of that, how we benefit, is around our focus around things like pathways and really trying to improve knowledge of mechanism, because those are the kind of things that are really ideal for a postdoc to work on, and they're publishable. All right, and so that by postdocs doing that kind of work, not only are you helping move the needle of science, all right, and helping your career advance, we're also helping our process as well because we're learning more about those different diseases and pathways involved, so we can more rationally be successful in identifying targets and successfully prosecuting those with small molecule drugs or biologics.
I see. So it's like a little small academic unit in Novartis.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Okay.
And then
Yeah.
kind of to extend that question,
Yeah.
I know it's pretty uncommon, at least for the companies that I know of,
Yeah.
to hire their postdocs.
Right.
Is that same, like, what are the chances that a postdoc would transition?
Yeah, so nobody in this room should view the postdoc program at NIBR as a route into working at NIBR, but we do hire them on occasion, and I'll get into that after AB's done. Okay, turn it over to you. There you go.
Hello, thank you for having me here. So, as Ross said, I'm a scientist in Emeryville. I've been was at Chiron for 10 years and purchased along with that site by Novartis. So I've now been at Novartis for 4 years and have enjoyed it a whole lot. So I want to tell you a little bit more about our site. The NIBR in Emeryville has a couple hundred scientists split between biology, general areas of biology, and chemistry. So within chemistry, of course, we have a number of medicinal chemists plus other chemistry-related groups. And then in biology, we cover everything from expression of protein, building biochemical and cellular assays, doing screens, and then building understanding of the biology or pharmacology of our targets and our therapeutics. And then the biological therapeutics area is one that focuses primarily on antibodies as therapeutics at our site. So we have expertise in sort of a critical mass and expertise in a number of areas. Right now, the postdocs in Emeryville are primarily working with scientists in cancer biology or pharmacology, and one in computational chemistry. But if there were an interest in a project in one of these other areas, there's enough expertise to support that at our site. So in terms of how we support drug discovery through the pipeline, we do everything in Emeryville from identifying and validating a new target for oncology through building the assays for that and the screens, and then gradually optimizing the inhibitors of that enzyme for use in animals and passing them on then into the clinic. So our measure of success of a program is actually the outcome of the first clinical trial in which we achieve what's called POC. That's proof of concept in the clinic. It's to prove that our effect in patients is with a compound is happening because we're targeting the enzyme that we intend to hit, and that the outcome is consistent with our expectations of that. So, so we support our pipeline in different areas, just dicing it up a little bit differently from what I said on the previous slide. In cancer biology, which is my area and what I'm going to talk about just for a minute, we support target identification and validation, mechanistic biology, and then translational work on a target. So as you might guess, target ID and validation uses generally biological tools such as SI or shRNA knockouts of a target to make sure that targeting that enzyme in a cancer setting will have a functional outcome that will primarily affect the tumor compared to normal tissues. And it's also critical for us to make sure we understand the biology in the cell of targeting that enzyme. We don't only look at what happens when we inhibit or knock down that enzyme and what kind of functional effect we get. We don't move a project forward in Novartis unless we have cellular markers that lead us to understand that the target is working in a way that makes sense to us, and where the functional effect in the cell follows from the effect on those intermediate steps. It's not just a question of inhibit an enzyme, kill a cell. We want to know the steps in between. We won't advance a project unless we have that level of understanding. So we begin that level of understanding with the validation step of the target, and then build the assays to use to track that activity in that cell from inhibiting that particular enzyme. As the project moves forward and we begin to have inhibitors from a screen against that enzyme, we stay on top of the biology, supporting the project team to make sure that the behavior in the cell is consistent, remains consistent with inhibiting that enzyme and having the expected functional consequence. We build assays in the testing funnel for our drug discovery programs that make sure we stay on track, that we haven't started getting our functional effect because of some off-target property of the compound that we've unwittingly built into the compound. We keep track of the markers all the way through. And then as the project moves closer to the clinic and we're thinking more and more about which group of patients we're going to target with our inhibitor, again, we're thinking about our markers and the underlying biology of the enzyme that we're inhibiting to put in place markers that we can track in the patient to be sure that we stay on target, that the functional consequences of using our drug are ones that we can understand, and that we can pick the patients that are most likely to respond to that inhibitor. So that's the main function of the cancer biology group as in supporting projects as it moves through the pipeline. So just a couple of examples of postdoc projects for Emeryville, so you get the idea of what a project could look like there. One of those is a project with Albert Lai in their cancer biology group, and it's a project that's currently being carried out by Bosun Min, who recently joined our Emeryville site. And so Bosun and Albert have taken advantage of a large database of information that has been put together by Novartis in collaboration with investigators at the Broad and at the Dana-Farber in Massachusetts. And that is that we have profiled thousands of primary tumors and cancer cell lines for copy number aberrations, for how frequently represented the SNPs are in those patient samples from tumors and in various cancer cell lines. And so through analysis of this large sample number, we realized that there is a region of DNA on chromosome 19 that's heavily amplified, particularly in prostate cancer. And it's a very narrow region of amplification. And so the hypothesis that Bosun is exploring is that within that region of focal amplification in pancreatic cancer, there is a driver gene that hasn't been well characterized as a driver, perhaps because it's primarily in prostate cancer and not well represented in other tumor types. So Bosun's project will involve drilling down into that amplicon through a pooled shRNA strategy to check the genes that are in that region of focal amplification and see if she can identify a novel target for pancreatic cancer in that region of amplification. Another pathway that is one of great interest to Novartis is the RAS-RAF signaling pathway. And we have one postdoc who is currently exploring the mechanism of activation of the kinase RAF for his postdoctoral work. But I'm interested in another kinase further down that signaling pathway. It's a small family of kinases called the RISC kinases, the P90S6 kinases. And they have been described in the literature for playing a role either in the epithelium-mesenchymal transition or in some of the phenotypes that are consistent with an EMT, such as a migratory and invasive phenotype. And so I think there's a space for a project looking downstream of a KRAS or BRAF activation to explore the role of RISC in the RISC kinases in supporting either the epithelium-mesenchymal transition or in some subset of these phenotypes that you see as cancer progresses into a more mesenchymal phenotype. So that's my plug for a project that doesn't yet have a postdoc identified. So as Ross said, there are 6 postdocs at Novartis in Emeryville. 3 of those are in the cancer biology area. 2 of them are in pharmacology. And then 1 project is working with a mentor in computational chemistry. So there's room for more. We have a really beautiful building that we all work in. It's a Legaretto architect designed building, award-winning research building. And the nice thing about working in that building is that we're all in one place. I have no idea what the animation of this slide is all about, but anyway. The nice thing is that all 200 of us are in one building. We have a lot of expertise, people from different sites, different areas, and so someone who knows what you need to find out is likely just across the hallway. You don't have to search throughout the whole organization to find someone who is there. On the other hand, if you need expertise, you have a total of 93,000 Novartis employees scattered throughout the world who you can make use of for interactions on science. So I'm going to pass this back to Ross unless somebody else has a question. Yes.
So it seems like the research facility in your focus on oncology.
That is true.
Do you have any research area that's more cardiovascular?
For cardiovascular, you would be better off working with someone from a different site. We probably couldn't support that project in Emeryville. Yeah.
So cardiovascular is primarily at our Cambridge and East Hanover sites.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, AB. Thank you. Okay, so let's wrap up with the program itself through this build slide. All right, so objectives, and we talked a little bit about this. Really want to support your scientific and career objectives and make this as an academic-like program as we can within an industrial setting. We want you to have the opportunity to advance your career and to publish on it as well. All right. Part of that is to help you understand how we do things at NIBR so that you can get a sense of how things work in the pharmaceutical industry, take that with you when you go on to whatever the next step is in your career, and to also help us partner effectively with academic centers of excellence, since, as I pointed out to you in that collaboration slide, we're highly dependent on working together with academia to be successful at what we do. So there are 2 application tracks to the postdoc program in NIBR. One is the NIBR postdoc track and the other is the presidential. Now, I want to make it clear, these are entry routes into the program. Once you're in the program, there's no distinction between these, okay? Everyone's a postdoc within NIBR. These are just different routes to get in, okay? And one of them, in fact, the NIBR route, we're gradually phasing out. So it's still there now, you'll still see it, but eventually it will probably go away. So let's talk about that one first. It's easy to cover. These are postdoc proposals that are driven internally. So AB, for example, wants a postdoc. She has a good idea of what that project's going to look like. She wants to craft a proposal. Is your opening a NIBR or presidential? Or either one? Okay. If AB wanted to craft a proposal, she could do so and send it to the education office. We send it out for scientific review. Our process is very much like you might expect from an NIH grant proposal or publishing a scientific paper. It goes out for anonymous review. We get the feedback back. So the education office acts as the editor, if you will. We provide that feedback to the mentor. Using AB as an example, AB would get the feedback. She gets a chance to review that proposal, and if it's approved, then the education office gives AB a rec to advertise against. So AB or whoever the investigator is can go out and advertise the position, that specific position, in Nature Science, a technology journal, wherever they think it will get the right play. And what you will see is a job posting for a specific postdoc position within NIBR with some description of what the project will be. And you apply for that like you would for any job. You come in, go through an interview process. If there's a good match, then you get the offer and we go on from there. Okay, it's the most straightforward way of getting into the program. But there are, from my perspective, there are some downsides to that. And one is you've got no skin in the game. All right, this is not your project, not your proposal. All right, and so the other route that we have is the presidential route, and these are driven by the postdocs. And we have an open rec on our website. I'll show you the information at the end of the presentation where you can find that. But you just apply to the presidential postdoc program. Cover letter, CV. We review those on a weekly basis. We review 20 to 30 of those a week. And what we're looking for is get a good sense of what that person's background interests are out of that cover letter and CV, and also seeing is there a match between what that person's interested in doing and what our needs are within NIBR. Now, if there is that match, we think the person looks good on paper, then the next step we do is a rather thorough phone interview with the education office. So with myself or the head of the office, head of the postdoc program, rather, Leslie Pond. So you'd be talking to one or either of us likely. That is a 90-minute interview. It's a kind of get to know you process. We want to learn more about you. We want to tell you more about the program. Some of what you've heard in this presentation is what we talk about during that process. There's a 20-minute presentation of your research during that telephone interview. So you will send us ahead of time a slide deck, a PDF or PowerPoint, whatever, of your research, and you'll have 20 minutes to present that to us over the phone. All right, and we keep that on time to be fair to everybody. And then we spend the remainder of the time actually drilling down into that. So what kind of challenges did you face? What kind of critical insights did you bring to your research? What sort of things did you learn? Are you passionate about science? What sort of things would you like to do next? Where is your research leading you? All these sort of things. So these are all the kind of things that we try and get more information from or out of that 90-minute interview. And again, we're looking for a good fit. Is there, I mean, you guys may be the greatest scientists in the world, but if we don't have a disease area or line within NIBR that has a similar interest, then there's not a fit there. So there's to be both parts of that equation. If you come through that interview okay and we think there is a fit, then we will send a recommendation to a disease area or a platform line saying, okay, I spoke with Debbie on the phone, think she's a great candidate, I think she'd fit well in oncology, what do you think? And then that disease area or line will let me or Leslie know whether they agree with that. If there is a potential fit, it's up to the disease area to take the next step, either call you on the phone, have a conversation with you, or bring you on site for an on-site interview. And that's like any postdoc interview. You go on, you're going to come and give a seminar, you're going to meet with the potential people you could be working with. You'll meet with a representative from the education office, a representative from HR. And again, trying to make sure that, that we're confident that you're the top-notch kind of scientist we're looking for and that there's a good fit with the program. Through that process, if we decide that there is a path forward, then the next thing to do is you will have a NIBR mentor identified, and you may have more than one choice. Okay, sometimes there's more than one disease area platform line who may be interested in you. So in which case you'll have to pick which one you want to work with, and that's your choice. We don't decide for you. You decide who you want to work with. But once you've identified who that NIBR mentor is, the next step in this process is to identify an academic mentor. And again, we do that to try and make this as academically flavored as we can, to bring another set of eyes into the process, to help guide you with external expertise on what your project and proposal is going to be. Those two mentors and you will craft an outline of what you think your project's going to be. That outline gets discussed with the education office, and the primary reason there is to make sure that we're all on the same page as to what your project's going to be. Because the next step is rather labor intensive on your part, and we don't want to get to the end and find out this is just not going to work. So we want to find out very early on, and we do that through the outline. If we come to an outline that we all agree upon, then the ball's in your court. You will work to craft a proposal. It's like a mini NIH grant, about 5 pages maximum, describing what your project's going to be, what you want to work on, how you're going to do it. And that goes through the same scientific review process as a proposal from a NIBR mentor. You get the feedback, you get one opportunity to revise your proposal, goes back out, and hopefully it's approved. We want that revision to be more around, okay, getting some additional eyes on your proposal and just trying to strengthen it scientifically. We don't want it to be a process where a reviewer comes back and says, look, this proposal should not be funded. All right, that's why we do the outline. We want to make sure that, you know, we're all up front as to what the work's going to be about right up front, and then all you need to worry about is the scientific rigor of your actual proposal. How long that takes is up to you. Some people knock it off in a couple of weeks. You can see it can vary. Some people take months. It's up to you how long it takes you to draft that proposal and get it in. Review process takes about a month, and then you get the offer. Now, one thing we are trying to do in the U.S. is we're trying to give conditional offers. So if you make it to the point of proposal writing and you have an outline in place that we all agree upon, then we'll give you a conditional offer, which is basically, okay, you have a role here in NIBR if you successfully get a proposal approved. So that way you can invest the time it takes to writing the proposal without worrying in the back of your mind, well, am I really going to have a position when this is done? All right, so we try and do those conditional offers here in the U.S. It varies from site to site and country to country as to whether we can do that. So any questions about that? So those are the two routes.
Just out of curiosity, what is the conversion rate on the proposal writing? Because, I mean, you're jumping through a lot of hoops.
Yeah.
To have one more hoop to
Right.
do at the end.
Yeah.
That requires a lot of work.
Yeah, right. I couldn't give you a number, but it's very high. I mean, we do not want to get to this stage and say to somebody, we can't, it's not going to work. Okay, we avoid that like, so it's minuscule, all right? So the program itself is three years long. We expect a well-defined project, of course. We have various other opportunities during that 3-year time frame. We expect yearly progress reports, basically to help us understand and you to have a chance to self-assess where you are, where things are going, give other people within the organization a chance to take a look at what's going on and provide you some additional feedback as to, are things going great? Could you be trying something different? Help you out with other challenges you might face. We have scientific seminars on site. The postdocs have their own monthly meetings or weekly meetings. They get together as a group depending on which site you're at. We provide travel to one scientific meeting per year for the second and third years. And the expectation is you're presenting something there. If you want to go to a meeting in your first year, that's between you and your mentor because their line will pay for that. Your academic mentor does not need to be co-localized geographically. Ideally, they would be. It's helpful. You can go see them on a regular basis, go to their lab meetings, interact with their lab. But if you're here in Emeryville and the best academic mentor for you is in Cambridge, fair enough. We will pay to send you there once per year to actually get some face time with that academic mentor. Let's see what else. So we have an annual postdoc retreat. We get all the postdocs globally together once a year. We just had one last week. We brought everyone from around the world, all the way from Shanghai, Basel, U.S. to Newport and Rhode Island, had a nice 3-day retreat with them. Great opportunity for them all to network, to share their scientific research, meet some other colleagues within NIBR. We also have a full day as part of that on various topics of interest to postdocs. We had a course on soup to nuts and how to discover drugs and get them to the clinic. We had career development opportunities. How could you advance your career both in Europe and in the U.S. and another workshop on developing leadership opportunities. So these are the type of things that are offered in that kind of retreat on a yearly basis. And I mentioned the academic mentor. And I should also point out that even if you come in through the NIBR route, there's no reason you can't have an academic mentor. It's not a requirement, but if you want to have one and your NIBR mentor agrees, there's absolutely no reason you can't. All right. Question?
Yeah. Does the academic mentor have to be in one of your? I noticed you had to have agreements or something with certain universities. If it's outside one of those universities, is that
academic mentor can be anybody that you and your NIBR mentor think is the right person to have. There are no limitations on that. Okay. I'm not going to read through these, just give you a sense of more globally some of the different things that a postdoc could work in. They vary again from the different disease areas to things like the platform lines I told you about before. So things like the group that really does a lot of the basic science for us. As A.B. mentioned, we have people in chemistry doing computer-aided drug design here in Emeryville and other sites as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities within NIBR to satisfy varied needs amongst the postdoc community. So I think you asked earlier where do postdocs go. So they go to a number of different routes here, as you can see. Fully half of them stay within industry. About 25% of them stay with NIBR. But as I said earlier, you should not view this as a route into full-time employment with NIBR. That is not the way we view it. We do not have a rule against hiring postdocs, and quite frankly, I think it would be stupid if we did, because we've had a good chance to assess you over 3 years and see what you're all about and see if there's a good fit. So if that's there, then you're free to apply for positions within NIBR just like anybody else could, but you'll be treated on equal footing with an external applicant. The other half of that 50% go on to careers in other pharmaceutical companies or biotech. About a third of them, or about 15% rather, go to academia. About a third of that group go straight into faculty positions. The other third either go into another postdoc or a type of role which would be expected to lead to a tenure track role within academia. And then there's a significant proportion, about a fifth, that actually do non-traditional scientific routes, so things like patent law, scientific communication. They may go off and start their own company, scientific consulting. So there's a lot of different opportunities that I think are available to you once you complete this program. What are we looking for? Well, I think not surprising. The same thing we looked at other programs look for. We're looking for strong scientific credentials. Have you really moved the needle in your field? Are you a critical thinker? Are you passionate about science? Do you know where you're going with your work? What would you like to do with your life? What critical insights have you brought? All these things, I think, not surprising at all. But we really want to know what drives you and really get a good sense of why you picked your current research, what you've learned for it. Do you know what's going on in the field, where you think that's going to go? Because we really want to have those people that are passionate about science and are independent thinkers, and also those that have some understanding and some ability to work in a collaborative fashion as well, because you need to keep in mind that when we try and make this as academically focused as possible, you are in an industry setting. People you're working with are in the lab focused on discovering and developing new medicines, and so their day job's responsibility is not to help you out with your work. They're quite happy to do so in most cases, but you need to have some persuasive skills to get them to come on board and help facilitate the type of work you're doing. But there's a huge array of opportunities available to you within an organization like NIBR, both from a technology perspective and an institutional scientific knowledge perspective as well, that can help you succeed. And last slide, I think, is so how do you do this? Well, you can find more information on our website for the NIBR route by just going here and searching for jobs under postdoc. These recs will also show up, as I said, in Nature, Science, other journals, depending on what the role is. For the presidential route, remember, this is not for a specific role. It's to get into the program, and then you will decide after the appropriate fit is determined what that project will be. And so again, you can go to nibr.com and just look for postdoctoral positions under careers, and you'll see more information on the presidential route. And by all means, if you submit your application in your cover letter, mention that you were at this presentation, and that will help us understand that, okay, you're a little bit beyond the standard motivated postdoc. You've made an effort to actually learn more about the program, and that will help us out as well. So I think that's it. Thank you for coming today. And as I said, got a few minutes now to answer some more questions if you like. Debbie and AB and I will be around for the reception, and we're happy to have some informal discussion with you at that point as well. So any other questions now that any of us can help you out with? Yes?
Is there any deadline, like how long after your PhD can you apply for the program? I heard that presidential, like you have to be within a year of your graduation from your PhD.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I was remiss in not bringing that up. So we have a 3-year time limit post-PhD, research post-PhD. Okay, so if people want to take some time off and go travel the world or have a family or something like that, that's not part of that 3 years. It's 3 years of research post-PhD is the time limit for applying to the program. I also don't think I directly answered the question about publication that was asked earlier. Again, gets to the academic focus of this program in that we want you working on something you can publish on. We do not want you working on proprietary research within NIBR. All right, we avoid that as best we can. Now, there will be instances where you might make some discovery or something you're working on which we think, okay, this needs to be proprietary, needs to be patented, we need to be careful about how we publish it. But those are very rare, and what we really want is for you to be able to publish like you would in any academic setting. Those publications do need to go through an internal review process, but that's really a pro forma thing, just to abide by the rules that we all do within NIBR. But the goal is to really have you working on stuff that you can publish on, so you've got the scientific currency you need when you leave NIBR, that you can pursue whatever career you want to, and that you're not limited to just staying within an industry path, which is not what we want you to have to do. Yep.
So how does the NIBR handle patents if the discovery scientists, are they an author on the patent?
Yeah, if you're an inventor, you're an inventor. Full stop. I mean, that's the law. So yeah, if you discover something that NIBR decides that a patent needs to be filed on, you'll be one of the inventors. Yep. Yes?
So I have a question about other sort of training that might happen during your postdoc.
Yeah, sure.
So I do like that it's academically focused.
Yep.
It enables you to become an academic later. But do you also learn about the business end of Novartis? And if you wanted to move, you had some other people that went into other areas, not just staying within NIBR.
Yep. So there are other opportunities within NIBR. Again, the Education Office offers a lot of those. We have a large scientific course curriculum that we offer. The workshop I mentioned that we had at the postdoc retreat, and we call Targeted Therapy, is one example of how you can get good exposure to how the business works and how scientific strategy drives a lot of the decisions we make within our organization, from getting a drug from identifying a target to actually getting it registered. From true business perspective, I'm sure there are some courses that could be available with NIBR. I'm not familiar with them right now, but there are other opportunities through attending some of the courses that are internally, working with your mentor. If you both agree that's an appropriate thing to do, then those opportunities are there. A lot of this stuff will, quite frankly, come from osmosis, right? You're in the environment, and you are a NIBR employee the same as everyone else is. So if there's an agreement amongst everyone involved, you can go to project team meetings and be exposed to various different aspects of what it is we're doing there. So. Yeah.
Is the NIBR postdoc salary similar to the NIH guidelines, or is it higher? Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah. The guidelines are set by us, but they are rigorous scientific guidelines. I mean, there has to be, the work has to be novel. Are you actually addressing a key hypothesis, identifying a key biologic mechanism, or advancing some mechanistic understanding? It needs to
know how much she's getting paid.
How much she's getting paid? Sorry, did you say paid?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear pay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Thank you, AB. All right, yes, that was a really boring answer, and yeah. Here you think I'm trying to deflect the question, right? Yeah. You should have let me keep going. I was burying myself well there. Yeah, sorry about that. So it's all right. My first comment is you shouldn't come here because of what we pay, but entry is $55K a year, and then it's a stepped increase for the second and third year. All right. So we pay attention to how you're doing. I mean, we have the early progress reports. We want to make sure you're flourishing and things are going well, but it's not a performance-based pay scale. Second year, it automatically bumps up to the next level. Third year bumps up from there. Does that answer your question? All right. Thank you. You want to wrap up?
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's take some time and take the rest of that.
Oops.
Let's move outside for our reception. Our food is there so that we can ask some more questions one-on-one. Thank you very much for joining us today. And